Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to winterize your heucheras so they survive a winter in not only in cold climates, but how they will survive a winter in zones 5 to 9. So when I'm talking about cold climates, I'm talking zones 2 to 4 when it relates to heucheras. Now there are so many different varieties of heucheras out there and every color going. There's black pearls, there's cherry truffles, there's primos. There's foliage that is lime green, green, spearmint, red, burgundy. There's gray tones, there's caramel tones, which are shades of golds and browns. And they come in a variety of zones. Now, most of these new ones, these fancy ones like the black pearls, the cherry truffles and that, are zones 4 to 9. The older coral bells were in the zones of 2 and 3 and up, so they could handle the cold. But the zones for 4 or 9 do need some winter protection if you are in a zone 2 and 3. And there's ways to handle this and do it right, and then there's ways to do it wrong. The first thing I would say is, and I'm going to post it here, do not follow the advice on Google. On Google, they will tell you to take your heuchera and cut it down to 2 to 3 inches. That is wrong. When I first started growing heucheras, I followed the advice that I read everywhere because heucheras were new to me, and I cut them back. Big mistake. They did not survive. And I finally figured out what I did wrong. And now that I've been successful with these plants for a couple of years and had them in my garden, you can see here the leaves are getting nice and large on these plants. I have learned how to treat them in my zone 3 cold environment, which is do not cut them back, do not prune them, only remove debris, dead leaves off of them, and you can mulch them up really good, as well as add some organic material to them. Do not fertilize them. I don't fertilize perennials anyhow. And finally, do not prune. Leave them as is, because this leaf system that they have on them is not only collecting nutrients and photosynthesis from the sun, it is also protecting the woody crown of these plants. And you will see here, the crown is very woody on them down here. And so if you cut this off, you're not protecting this plant. You can remove these kind of leaves right here that are dead or in bad shape to keep them healthy and prevent disease. But you want to leave the plant alone when it comes to pruning. Do not prune. Even if you're in zones 5 to 9, do not prune your plant back, because you want that protection. Because even in a warmer zone, you can have a freak storm, a freak snowfall that would do damage to this plant if you expose the crown. So leave all the leaves on and they will be just fine going forward. The other thing you can do in a cold climate, zones 3 and 4, is mulch these plants up. You don't have to cover the plants with mulch, but you want to mulch up to protect them. And you want to make sure you're watering them 2 to 3 times a week before freeze up, so they get the moisture they need, so that they can soak up the sun and soak up the moisture in the ground, and then they will go into winter in really good condition because they have what they need to get through, because they've absorbed all that moisture. If you're in a zone 2 and you're growing some of these fancier varieties of heucheras, coral bells, that are more for a 4 to 9 zone, then you want to mulch the plant over, and you can use a number of different things. You can use grass clippings on them, you can use natural mulch, you can use cedar mulch. Cedar mulch is great for plants because it's a bug deterrent, and as you're mulching them, you're also protecting them from the rabbits and the animals getting at them. For me, it's just mulching around the plant and giving it a good soak and removing any dead debris. Now, what happens if you're growing these plants in containers? Here are my heucheras that I did in my fall arrangements. I just planted these up, and look at how big they are already. They are huge and beautiful. Look at that beautiful fall foliage. Now, being in the zone 3B, I cannot leave these in this container unless I take this container inside, put it in a cool spot in my basement, water it sparingly throughout the winter, and then I can bring the container back out. Or I can take the plant out of this container, repot it in fresh soil, and once again, put it in a cool spot in my basement and keep it alive over the winter. The other thing with this is, if I choose not to keep it, if I choose to keep it in its container and not bring it inside, and I live in a cold environment, I would need to take this whole container, and I'm going to get wet here because I'm soaking these really well right now, and I need to take the container and I bury the entire container in the garden. And then I can leave them in the container. They need that insulation from the soil in cold climates to get them through the winter. And then you would want to mulch them good around the plants in the container to carry them over and leave the foliage on. If you're in a zone 5 to 9 and you have them in containers, they should survive in the containers, no problem, providing they're getting ample water and you can continue to give them some organic material. I would not fertilize them over the winter. I would let them naturalize if you do fertilize your perennials, but they should be fine. You won't have those issues like we do here where the climate gets really frigid, because the pot will freeze solid in my climate. It'll be rock hard and that will kill the plant. So that's what we're trying to prevent. So my choice with regard to protecting these and carrying these over the winter, because I did plant them in containers, is I personally am going to remove them from the containers and put them in the garden and soak them in really, really well and mulch them up this weekend. And they should be good to go forward and survive the winter. Now, you should be watering these plants 2 to 3 times a week in preparation for winter, to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, that they get all the moisture that they need and the photosynthesis that they need to make them healthy and strong. And you can remove any dead or debris, dead, dying leaves or foliage around them, and they will do well. So this is a black pearl. This is new to my garden this year, first time I've ever grown it, and I've started mulching it up with black cedar mulch around it, and I need to get some more. These have done really well. They've already settled in. You can see I have some growth on them. They're looking healthy. Not a lot of spent leaves on them, actually none, and they've been loving the full sun and the moisture. So that has been key to get these through, is getting them in the ground soon and then watering them and making sure that they don't dry out completely. You know, if I stick my finger in there, it's going to be moist probably half an inch down because I'm watering them 2 or 3 times a week. Over here, I have the cherry truffles over here and the primos, and I need to water them in good, and I still need to mulch them, but they're looking okay. And then I will take the ones from my containers and I will add them and scatter them through this area as well. And I'm still cleaning up debris in this garden from the storm because the neighbor's trees blew all over the place. So I'm gonna finish that up and then I will get them transferred into here and soak them in really well. When I plant the Heucheras into their holes, this time I will put the plant in the hole, I will add water to the hole, then backfill with the soil and then mulch them up. So for instance, looking at this Heuchera here, I could take these leaves off because there's some damage to them. But I won't touch the rest because you want to protect this crown. In fact, here are some new foliage coming out right there. So it's looking really good. So those are some of the tips I have for you to successfully bring your Heucheras through the winter. And I learned this the hard way. Do not listen to Google. Do not listen to garden channels that are in warm climates if they're telling you to cut them back or leave them in containers. If you're in a cold climate, you must protect them. And that means a number of the methods I just mentioned you could implement, and your plants should get through the winter just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you'll try out some of the new colors and designs in the Heucheras and Coral Bells, because they're each very beautiful. And like if you look at the colors combined with, you know, the Gaillardias, blanket flowers and everything, they're really nice and offset each other really, really well. And I'm really enjoying even the black mulch with the black Heucheras, the black pearl Heucheras. I think it really pulls out that foliage and draws your eye over here.